This is Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance, and we are joined by Alan Lowenthal. We are in his district today in Long Beach, California. He is a member of the United States Congress. Sir, I want to speak with you about the minimum wage. Yes. As we know, there has been no increase in the minimum wage since George W. Bush was president.
Right.
In California, though, we have seen some serious movement on the minimum wage.
Yes.
Increasing statewide to ultimately $10 an hour, in the city of Los Angeles to $15 an hour, in unincorporated LA County, $15 an hour. What are you looking at on the federal level?
We're looking at putting some stability and some floor throughout the nation, and we're talking about introducing legislation that calls for a nationwide $15 an hour minimum wage. If you're earning less than $15 an hour and you're working full-time, you are in serious trouble. You cannot afford to pay the rent and to have your kids go to college or to support college without tremendous loans. $15 a month is not like having steak for dinner.
Right.
It is barely enough.
So when you consider a national floor,
Yes.
one could argue at least that would prevent jurisdictions from trying to race to the bottom.
That's right.
And that's part of the challenge facing Californians today, is that there's a patchwork
Right.
of minimum wages.
That's right.
And so when I think about a national increase,
Right.
I do recognize, though, that the Democrats are in the minority,
Yes.
and your friends in the Republican Party are in the majority, and they
Yes.
have been reticent to support a minimum wage
Yes.
increase, even beyond, what is it, $7.75? Is
Right.
that? Yeah.
Right.
So where do you go with this?
Well, I think the critical issue before the public today is what is the United States Congress doing about the tremendous income disparity in this nation, and that people are working there full-time and they're losing ground, they're losing their homes, they're losing their ability to stay, to support their kids, to have food on the table. We're just talking about a minimal standard. Now, I think that whether you live in a red state or a blue state, you can exist working full-time on less than $15 an hour.
So I'm wondering, though, politics is the art of the compromise.
Right.
And essentially, the supporters of what you're describing would be calling for a near doubling of the minimum wage.
That's right.
And so could one argue that maybe a better approach would be to bite off a little less and at least maybe reach the California standard, which I think will be $10 an hour?
And California will soon move further than that. I think that we're already seeing in California cities, San Francisco.
Right, for sure cities, yes.
Right, we're seeing that. And you have the same problem there.
Right.
And I think what you're saying is I found that when for example, a little different, when I was in the California legislature and I really wanted to have a container fee to pay for public health and to pay for infrastructure.
Which are containers meaning coming into the ports?
I was told you've got to do it at a national level. You will put one state at a disadvantage. And the same thing here. We're talking about not putting one state at a disadvantage over another or one at an advantage. We're saying we should have that debate to say what should be the national floor.
And so when does the debate begin?
Begins right now on TV. That's why we're
Here
talking
we are.
about it. The debate has begun.
I want to talk about another proposal that you have been espousing that arguably is trying to eliminate that disparity between states.
Right.
And that deals with how states draw political boundaries. I recall well that when California was going at it alone, and giving the ability to draw lines to an independent commission, a lot of concern that we will be at a disadvantage because if other states don't do that, we won't be able to protect incumbents. And because Congress is a body of seniority, as distasteful as protecting incumbents may sound, we need to protect California's seniority. It seems as if since the initiatives have passed, the parade of horribles hasn't occurred on that front. Is that fair, sir?
That's fair.
So where do you go on this question of trying to create a national standard? You know, the Supreme Court recently ruled
that initiatives and that are passed by not only by state legislatures but by the direct democracy, by the will of the people, are as correct
They're constitutional.
and constitutional
Right.
as those that are drawn by the state legislature. I think that's a direct support for direct democracy. That is support for direct democracy. I think that what we've seen is that in many states, more than just the protection of incumbency, gerrymandering has occurred to such that the people's voice is not heard anymore at all.
It's interesting.
And I think that's what needs to be done if we're really going to talk about reestablishing trust in government. That people have to feel that their vote means something and that they have a say over who gets elected or not, because the districts really reflect communities of interest and not the self-interest of elected officials.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I remember reading a statistic that in 2012, Barack Obama won the presidency, and if you added up all the votes for the Democrats for the House of Representatives and all the votes for the Republicans, the Democrats got more votes. But yet they continued to remain in the minority. And that is because, as I understand it, the drawing of lines.
That's exactly right. That's what's happened. State legislatures have drawn the lines to protect the interests of those state legislatures and not to protect the interests of the public at large.
And so where do you go with this one? Because, you know, a bit of irony, Republicans had been big proponents of giving line drawing to independent commissions, especially in California. They felt they had been disadvantaged, but now they're in the driver's seat. And so, you know,
I think it's all about power and how we give up power. And regardless of who's in the driver's seat, do we let people draw the lines, or do we let those that are in power draw the lines? I think that is the debate. And I think, to go back to that question that you asked me just before about why not start in a more incremental way with $15 an hour, a little closer, and I said, well, we're going to start this discussion right now. That gets everyone's attention. I think that potentially here is one that we may end up doing incrementally, because I don't think there's a sense of total reform yet in the Congress.
And what would that look like?
I think one of the things is to make sure that the Congress support. I think one of the first steps would be to get the Congress to act, just to say that, you know, there was this constitutional issue whether states have the right to allow independent. I think Congress has to reaffirm what the Supreme Court has said and put it on record, that states, you have a right. Congress always has the right to set election laws and to do that. But it must reaffirm what the court said is the intention, and what they believe, and what we wrote in the amicus brief is that the Congress always intended that the states would have more than just the state legislatures. We've asked for the initiative process in different times. We have supported.
So are any of
now I think that the next step, because we have to build a bipartisan consensus. You're absolutely right.
And I was going to ask you that.
It's all about, and so the first step might not be, even though I will have a bill again to mandate every state do.
Sure, of course.
I think that's a long shot. You know,
be that as it may.
Right. I'm going to work on a bipartisan solution with other members, Republicans also, in the lead. I've been working with the California Republicans, especially Dana Rohrabacher and I have done shared on. We're the lead, both of us, on the amicus brief to support the ability of states to do that. We had a piece of legislation that said if the courts decide against independent states to have independent commissions, that we would not have a mid-decade slaughter. We would keep it until the next time. Dana and I were co-sponsors. We originated together, and we had equal number of Democrats.
I would like you to.
So I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to try to take it step by step and build a coalition.
Will you come back and talk about this issue? It's really an important one. His name is Alan Lowenthal. We're in his district today in Long Beach, California. He's a member of the U.S. Congress. I'm Brad Pomerance, and this is Charter Local Edition.